Taking religion out of it for you now, is it hard to continue living polygamy?
Yeah, it's hard. Is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it to me. And so far, it's been worth it to them.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I was raised in a family with 4 moms and 34 kids. We were members of the FLDS Church, which is a church run by Warren Jeffs, who is now serving a lifetime sentence in prison.
I was raised in the mainstream LDS church in Utah. Sam and I have been married for 10 years now and have 2 awesome kiddos.
Yes, we do. We are super excited to finally give you all what you've been asking for. We have an interview with the man, the legend, and we want to welcome Brady Williams. Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
We were so excited when gratefully you reached out and said that you'd be willing to do this interview with us because we just loved your family and you guys. Honestly, we've watched a lot of documentaries, we've watched a lot of shows around polygamy, and we just really felt like you were the most solid polygamous family that we had seen. And we were just, we just thought it was super awesome. And so it was great when we had the opportunity to touch base with you and to be able to talk to you more about life after the show and where your family is now.
Yeah, so the show, My 5 Wives, we just kind of want to get into that a little bit. We reviewed the show in its entirety, and obviously we had a lot of insight and opinions based on the way I was raised versus the way the show portrayed your family in the AUB and all of that.
Kind of going into post-show, everyone's so excited to know more of how your family's doing now. And also, towards the end of the second season, I know you guys were talking about possibly moving to Seattle or getting out of like the physical community of the AUB and what that was going to look like for your family. So did you guys end up moving to Seattle, or what did that look like?
No, although eventually someday I want a vacation home up there. But we eventually moved. Oh gosh, it was probably, 6 years ago. We moved up to Eagle Mountain. A couple men in the community down there where we were living bought my 3-plex and my duplex off of me finally. We took that money and were able to take it and put it down on a wonderful, nice home. It started out as 11,500 square feet, which is big. But it had these big garages that I was able to put in 5 beautiful new suites for each of the wife. So she's got her own little 1,000 square foot suite that has her own little kitchen, living room, and bedroom, and a big, nice bathroom and closet. I mean, they're really beautiful and they're really nice finishes, but a huge gathering area for the whole family. I mean, Sam will know. It's a prototypical, perfect polygamist home that you would love. It's now over 18,000 square feet for 5 wives, and we have a huge living room, and we have a dining room with a custom-built table in there that I built that seats 35 people, and
awesome!
Oh,
big industrial kitchen along with all the other kitchens, and nice big mother-in-law's apartment underneath. And
wow. So because the way I was raised, each mom had their own room, but then there was the common areas like you talk about, the big kitchens and all of that. I think that you've already answered my question, but you're still with the 5 of your wives, right?
Yeah, they're all still with me. Yeah,
okay.
So we're all still together.
And in this home, do the 5 wives do things together, cook together, mingle together all the time, or do they kind of stay in their separate areas?
Yes and yes. So they have their place. They can just go be them, and that I can just go be with them, or that they can just mingle. They have their own little sitting room, like a little living room and a kitchen. It's a fully functioning kitchen. They only have their own little like laundry facility. Everybody can just do their own laundry. Nice. We went back and forth of whether or not we wanted just a big laundry room, and they wanted to be able to just have their own little things. So I did that, because I'm a builder, and it was not hard for me to take down this project and have a really thriving business that could pay for it. So they have their suite, which is like a self-contained one really nice master bedroom, master bath. They're a really nice master closet, a laundry, and a kitchen, and a sitting room. And it's about 1,000 square feet, right? Give or take 100 square feet. and then
Did you?
big area that we all gather. And they still do. We still get together Monday through Friday, have dinners
Wow.
together. And it's for anybody who's there. We still make way too much food now because we think we're cooking for 25 kids, but we're only, sometimes there's just 5 people there, and other times there's 20. And so there's always lots of leftovers, but.
Nice. Did you get a man shed on this property, like the last one you're working on, or?
No, I don't have a man shed, and I have my own room that goes back and forth between being my office / room, and because it's an office with a bedroom in the back with a bathroom, but most of the time that's been somebody else's room. So
I see.
Like recently, this hasn't really been covered except for in some of the interviews I've done. But me and Rosemary's son James had a catastrophic accident, and with massive brain trauma, and so we had to make that room into ADA accessible, and so that he could rehabilitate. And then he rehabilitated so fast and was so miraculous that he didn't need it anymore. So now he's off on his own again.
Oh, wow. I was going to ask.
That's a big, long story we could tell, which is pretty near and dear to my heart, that just only happened just over a year ago. So.
Oh, wow.
Gosh.
Yeah. We could spend a lot of time on that to do the story justice, but that whole thing happened. And, but yes, so I have my own room. That was kind of a side tangent. And it's back to me in my room now that he moved out of it about a month ago.
Wow. Well, hey,
glad he's doing well.
I know there's a lot to say about it, but I'm glad that he recovered. It sounds like fully, and he's fine now. Okay.
Yeah, it was horrific. He fell 3 stories off his sister's balcony onto his head onto the concrete sidewalk.
Oh my God!
And he was in a coma for 3 months. It was horrible. It was as bad a brain damage as someone can have before dying. And they told us, listen, your son's never gonna speak again. If he survived, once he survived and came out of a coma, listen, he's gonna be paralyzed. He's gonna never speak again. He'll be permanently handicapped and in a wheelchair and stuff like that. But then he just kept on defying all the odds to where now he's back working full. It's crazy. And this is the same kid, and this is the reason he survived. He was a barefoot trail runner, did all the Spartan races. He never smoked, he was fit as a horse. He was 180 pounds of pure lean muscle. Wow. And that's the only reason he even survived the impact and was able to survive, being 5 months in the hospital and then months of recovery after that, to where now, just over a year later, he just ran another Spartan race.
Wow.
Wow, that is incredible.
Oh, I'm just sorry to even. I experienced an accident, nothing that crazy, and was in a coma for a few days, and had some brothers that were in a coma for a month, and that alone was so traumatic that it's hard to even talk about sometimes. So I am just so sorry to hear something like that is beyond words.
Yeah, he's an inspiration. He's an inspiration about, so that was a big bombshell. I haven't told you guys about that, but yeah.
Hey.
No, that's fine.
I'm glad to hear about it.
I mean, and especially
the good news.
Yeah, the good news that he's okay, and hearing about how your family is now. That was what we were wanting to hear anyway, and hearing that people are doing well and overcoming huge obstacles in life, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, like now we have 11 kids. We have 11 grandkids.
Wow.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Congratulations.
I think the end of the season there was one grandbaby on the way right at the end.
Yeah,
that's what it was. Yes.
So it was Carly having Huck, and I think they did a little year-end special of, if I'm not wrong,
of him having a hard time, right?
Yeah, super preemie, and he's up and fine and just going crazy as a 10-year-old that can't be stopped. And and then Addison, my last child born not on the show. I think Naomi was pregnant or something, but she's my dolly. She's my last one, and she's 9 years old and just as cute as can be.
Oh wow, that's wonderful.
I remember thinking the way the show ended, with the baby being born and having some issues, and we weren't sure how it was going to all turn out, we both looked at each other and said, wait a minute.
Yeah, I think I was Googling. I was like Googling afterwards to like check on the baby. I'm like, but is the baby okay? Like, because they didn't give a whole lot of information. It was
Yeah.
just that he came super early. And then I think it might have shared that he was able to get out of the hospital, but then there really wasn't a whole lot of information. So it's so good to hear that he's thriving now and that things are
Baby Huck.
baby
Yes.
hug.
Yeah.
So being a grandparent now of 11, how's being a grandpa? I hear it's the best thing ever.
Yep.
I love it. I just love it. I thought when I had Huck, when my daughter had Huck, that's how much I own him. But I was okay. I'm going to see. Am I going to have this same just overwhelming feeling of love where I would do anything, or is it going to be like, I know I'm going to love him, but it's going to be a little bit less than my child? And for me, not a bit. Like, I would just lay my life down right now, and it was instantaneous. I held that little baby that was it could fit in the palm of my hand. Hug. And every grandchild since then. I mean, I'm a sap. I'm a real softie. But
That's amazing. We keep hearing that the only thing better than having a child is having a grandchild. So we keep hearing that.
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah. I love it. It's wonderful.
That's
It's a great thing.
awesome.
Wow.
So what else is new and exciting for your wives? What's been going on how are they doing? I know, like I said, at least from an outsider perspective, only seeing what the TV shows were showing, it just showed that they were like actually truly friends. They seemed to get along well. I know that the stuff with their family was kind of hard, but how have they been doing since the show?
So the stuff with the family, while it persists, the little bit of the othering, with time heals a lot of wounds. They'll communicate and they do stuff, and some are more than others, but some families are better than others at it. So with their families, I think it's pretty good. And between the wives, they generally get along well. Some better than others. Some have hard times and not so hard times. Sometimes they go through a hard time for a year or two, and then they're starting to, it gets better. Like anybody's life, you go through phases, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly their relationship go through phases. But generally speaking, all the time I'll go out and there'll be 4 wives sitting around the dinner table, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go start doing the dishes. I need to go to bed. And and they'll just sit there and keep chit-chatting and talking, and so that's good. And they'll take trips together. They'll make excuses to go fly to Seattle and see my dad, or go see their cousin together or something like that. And so I'm really blessed that way. I think my family does well, but I think I really give the credit to them. I think they just try really, really hard to be bigger than themselves and bigger than their justified jealousies. Honestly, I mean, there's stuff that's just hard to deal with in polygamy. It just is. But every marriage, right? You gotta be bigger than yourself. You gotta be willing to sacrifice, and in any relationship, even within a business relationship, there's a give and a take.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has it? I mean, I think I can probably guess the answer to this question because I see it with my own parents. But taking religion out of it for you now, is it hard to continue living polygamy?
Yeah, it's hard. Is it worth it? Yeah, it's worth it to me, and so far it's been worth it to them. Is it going to continue to be worth it to them? I hope so. Is it going to continue to be worth it to me? I think so. I mean, there's no doubt inside of me that I'm going to continue to choose to give my all to each one of those women and to all my children. Like, I can't imagine me not doing it. I don't ever even go there. Like, there's never been a doubt in my mind. Never has it gotten so hard where I wonder, should I keep going? It's always, I wonder how to keep going better. So I just don't even go there.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. I mean, because, and once again, not to compare you to Cody Brown, but we see what's happening with his family, and you start taking religion out of it, and all of a sudden he's once again, this is according to the show, he's claiming that he never even loved some of the wives and that they were forced to get married because of their religion and different things like that. And you're just like, whoa, it's clearly not working out for them once you start stepping away from the religious aspect of it all. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, for me, like, I'm the only authority on me, but I can speak to, I would never presume to speak for Cody, but I can talk to the fact that Cody's not alone in having that attitude. There's many who never married for love. I'm very fortunate that I insisted on it.
Wow.
Within myself. Like, I would not marry someone if I wasn't head over heels in love with them. And I can honestly say that, and it's just true, that I had that Twitter-pated, just, I'm so in love with you. Of course I want to spend the rest of my life dedicated to you and the raising of children, right? And I was able to do that 5 times. And I honestly, I don't want to toot my horn, but I just think it's really rare. From everything I've experienced, there's very few men. I mean, so many men have come to me and they're like, yeah, I got to get married again so I can keep my first wife. And because that's taught very clearly in the doctrines that Brigham Young espoused this a lot, but not just him. There's a lot where you have to have a quorum in order for you to keep any. So you've got to have a minimum of 3 to even keep the first 2, right? And so, and within the AUB, at least, you have to be a polygamist to have certain positions of authority. Right. And so when all that goes away, and it all went away for me, it just becomes a more authentic life. Why are you doing it? I'm doing it because I love them. And when it gets tough, like what you were saying with Cody, according to the show, he never loved them. Well, what the hell did you marry him for? Anybody who, let's take Cody's name out of it, anybody who enters into what should be the bastion of love without love to begin with, you're just stupid. That's what I say. Anybody who's listening, if you're doing it it's hard enough if you have love. If you're doing it without love, oh my God, that's miserable.
Yeah.
Now, it seems like you obviously know a lot of stuff doctrinally. So if you don't mind me going to a doctrine question, because we've had a lot of people ask us about the comments of needing 3 wives. Okay. Now, Sam grew up never really hearing that specifically. In the FLDS, we ask almost every single person we interview, and some people say they heard the 3 wives. Some people heard there wasn't a limit and that you could live monogamy and still be okay as long as it was within the celestial law. And so we've heard a lot of different things, but you were just barely saying it. Specifically, Brigham Young was saying that. Could you give us a little more insight on where those doctrines came from and how Brigham Young taught that?
So it's back alley doctrine.
Okay. Like Journal of Discourses?
Journal of Discourses, conference talks. There's a lot of the apocryphal Mormon writings that talk about quorums and the insistence on, you can't be. So there's tiers of godhood, and if you have maybe it's 13 wives, then you can have this many wives. And the hem of the temple robe, if you have 5 wives, is this long, and that indicates an outward description of that you have more authority than someone who only has 3. And then the hem of your temple robe is only 3, and 12 if you have 12 wives, and so this progression of quorums, all of that. Now, I mean, with the internet now, it's pretty easy to go find those original sources where you just Google quorums of wives, Mormon, early Mormon, whatever, and you'll find it. I don't have it. I could have looked it up and had it locked and loaded and ready for you, but
no, it's fine.
It's pretty easy to find all that.
Maybe we'll look it up and throw a quote up on the screen here.
Yeah. And that was just nice to hear someone that actually had the facts, because like I said, every person, it's just been these whispers, I feel like, of either they heard it or they didn't, or it was taught to them, but it wasn't taught to somebody else.
And certainly a lot of it is the authority of the day, at least in the AUP or any group. So the modern prophet says and interprets this little passage that Brigham Young indicated about quorums, and he says, "Verily, verily, you have to have 5 if you're going to do this, and you have to have 3 if you're going to do that." But it was very clearly taught in the AUB Endowment House, which I worked there as a temple worker. It was taught in our pre-endowment session instruction sections that is absolutely true. You couldn't work in the temple unless you had multiple wives.
Wow.
Oh, you couldn't work in the temple. Okay, so
as a temple worker. Now you could go through and receive your endowments, but you couldn't be a temple worker.
so the AUB has a temple.
Well, it's an endowment house, just like they call it an endowment house, but it's where all of their ordinances are given, for sure. Yeah.
Do you know if they have all of the same ordinances? Do they have all the same ordinances as the mainstream LDS church, or?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and they go back to the endowment that that Brigham Young wrote in the St. George Temple. So that original endowment is the endowment they give. And they do it with a live session, not a recorded session.
Okay.
Oh,
so back to the
live
original.
session.
All of the wording, all of the tokens and penalties and all of that stuff, as it was, well, it's almost the exact same thing that Brigham Young did. They've even changed some of the penalties so that it's not as graphic.
I would love to get you and Benjamin in a room together.
We had Benjamin on.
He's from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the righteous branch, but their whole thing is they've built temples that are the exact, like, everything is the exact same as what Joseph Smith originally had in the temples. So that's their main fundamental focus, was that there's a lot of members of the LDS church that as things were changing in the temple, they were like, no, we need to get back to the way the temple originally was. So they have temples and they claim to do the exact original, which is intense. Like anytime I'm like, any of these fundamental groups that want to go back to that, I'm like, that is some intense dedication because...
Oh, yeah. Woof. And that's what the AUB's claim is that they have the original endowment and they have the original garment and they have, all of that. It's fundamentalism. So you go back to the time that you identify that the fullness was on the earth and you freeze it and say there's nothing different from now.
Yeah.
And that's a way of looking at fundamentalism. Same with Islam. You go back to the times of Muhammad, freeze it. How did you dress? What were your doctrines? How did you eat? How did you experience the world? Now freeze frame that and everybody keep living exactly that way. And it always heralds back. So fundamentalist Mormons want to go back to the time of Joseph. Right. Freeze frame. How did they dress? How did they eat? How did they, everything, that's what you do. Fundamentalists, anything. Fundamentalist Buddhism, Hinduism, that's a cardinal of what fundamentalism is. If you want to know if you're a fundamentalist, do you think you should be exactly how the founder was or lived? Now you know you're a fundamentalist.
Yeah. Do you mind me asking if the garments, because the FLDS garments were very different than LDS garments.
They were one piece.
They're one piece
covered
all the way
body.
to wrists and ankles. Is that similar to the AUB?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, if you can look and see, it's very, very. You look at Hiram or Brigham's garment, it looks like an AUB garment.
Oh, okay.
So they just continued on. And of course, the FLDS claims that they have the one truth and kept it the same. I will say, though, something interesting here is, yes, they all go back to Joseph Smith, but some of the most extreme teachings back in that time were from Brigham Young. And so it seems like all the fundamentalists hold very tightly to Brigham Young's teachings as well, because he came out and just laid out all of this stuff that I now look back and say, wow, crazy. But it's very intense, and he was very sure about it all. And it seems like a lot of people hold on to his teachings, if not just as much, maybe even more than Joseph Smith's.
Yeah, so I have a little mental diagram to paint about what I think about the origin point. Is Joseph Smith did the black and white and picture, and Brigham Young took the crayon and filled it all in. And so I would say the origin point is Joseph and Brigham, because Brigham really he's the one who wrote the endowment, right? I mean, Joseph did the washing and anointing in the Nauvoo temple, but Brigham went into the St. George temple and wrote out the endowment as fundamentalists use it today.
No, that's a really good way to depict it. I mean, church history was always something. I think it's hilarious that I ended up marrying somebody from a polygamous group, from a fundamentalist group, because church history was always something, even in my early 20s, that I had lots of questions about and didn't ever. One of my main things that I didn't ever quite feel right about was church history and polygamy. And I struggled with my faith for a little bit, and then kind of got strengthened again. And then met Sam, and we got married in the LDS temple and all of that. But it still cracks me up that I ended up with someone from that background, because that was always the hardest thing for me.
Yep.
So I always enjoy hearing different people's perspectives or hearing more about that, because I just think it's so fascinating. And like you said, there is the modern revelation piece too, right? Yeah. Where they're all splitting from the same thing. And yet each of these fundamentalist groups, when you have that idea that there's modern revelation and that one prophet can be speaking for God, then you end up with such a diverse group of fundamentalists, because it's they all might believe in polygamy, but then you have someone like Warren Jeffs, and then someone like the AB leader, and you have the Kingstons over here, and they each have their own little shtick of whatever the flavor of that prophet is, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or they interpret it, right? So they still all herald back to those original doctrines, but they interpret those doctrines, and they go get the word of the Lord of how to apply that in a modern world, and that's a challenging thing to do. And, so I can be a little bit compassionate. Imagine me trying to run this group of 10,000 people in a modern world. That's a daunting task, because everybody thinks you are talking to God.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so now, answer, how's it going to work? What do you do now that you have internet? I mean, it's an impossible task that, frankly, it's doomed to failure, because you aren't up to the task of speaking for God. You're a man. You just can't do it effectively. There's always going to be a failure in there. So
yeah. Do you mind if I ask your opinion on the mainstream LDS church? Obviously they're always a little bit behind the times, but they do continually change and morph a little bit to be more accepted by society. Not a lot. Like I said, they're always a little bit behind the curve, but they're trying to get there a lot more than the fundamentalists are, which we're seeing now an influx of fundamentalist groups because of that. The mainstream church tries to be a little more progressive, and the people that don't like that say, no, let's go back to the fundamentals. And then you end up with another group. And so we're seeing a lot of that. Do you think that progressing is helping or hurting the mainstream church? And do you think it's going to continue to make more fundamentalist groups essentially out of it?
Yeah. So I think it's helping the people by it's more inclusive and friendly, and a great place to be to raise kids type thing, right? And so the reach is more about 90% of what they teach, which is charity and love and inclusion and all those things. Where it hurts is they're hurting their claim to being the one true source of God. Because wait a minute, were you the one true source in the 1960s when you excluded African Americans, or now are you the one true source? Because does God change? You say God doesn't change. So they're hurting their right to claim that their source is God. Right. And which it's just hypocrisy and inauthenticity. Quit making the claims that you can speak for God. That's what I think. Now, if you're a place where, hey, let's get together because we're like-minded and we have these same basic understandings of what deity are, and that's wonderful. And those things are great for societies and people, and it gives structure where people aren't motivated to give their own structure and things like that. So I think the church can be a really great place. I have multiple children in the church, and I congratulate them, and they have wonderful lives. And the church has been really good. In fact, I work with members of the First Quorum of the 70 in advocating a place and of being able to make it, because so many people want to leave fundamentalism but they don't want to leave Mormonism. And it was so hard, and they've since changed. And I like to think I had a little part to play in that, maybe a big part to play in the fact that the church used to say that a young man or young woman that wanted to leave, wanted to join the church, but was from a polygamous family, had to leave the home. They couldn't live in the home, just like a child in a gay home had to leave the home to join the church. And my oldest son joined the church and went on a mission. That was actually covered in the show.
Yeah.
Yep.
There is a big backstory to that, of how he was actually able to stay in the home. And anybody who knows Mormonism at that time knows that he shouldn't have been able to be in the home. And they weren't going to let him get baptized. They weren't going to let him go on his mission or anything like that. But I'm always a yes if. I wouldn't take a no as an answer, and neither would he. He's just like, no, I want to stay in my dad's home and join the church. Why can't I? Well, the brethren said you can't. Well, okay, who do I talk to? Which brethren do I need to talk to so I can stay in the home? My dad's your biggest advocate. He's saying, join the church, go on a mission, be this, be that. And he went all the way to the top. Thomas S. Monson wrote a letter.
Wow.
Deferring that rule against him and allowing him to stay in the home.
Wow.
Got the letter and went on a mission. And then I had another child, went through the same thing, went all the way up. Finally had, and to where we went through it. And then I just said, I finally went to the ivory tower, the church office building, and says, listen, I got a lot of kids who want to join the church.
Can we just make an exception for the Williams family?
Here's the system you go through. And then we talked about that. And then I was working with the mission president at the time, and who's now a member of the First Quorum of the 70, and made it a lot more streamlined. And then they did away with the rule.
Oh, wow.
You can actually stay in the home. You have to go through a couple processes. If you're in a fundamentalist home but want to be a member of the church, that's fine. Just go through this interview, make sure everything's cool, and you can do it. And all the way to the point where now we were actually invited to attend the ward as a family, full polygamous family, and sit together. It used to be a man couldn't sit with multiple wives in an LDS chapel. We were openly invited. We were the test case to where if we wanted to. Now we've decided we don't want to go to attend mainstream LDS. It wasn't a fit for our family, but we were invited to. So kudos to the church.
Wow.
They were very inclusive, and they said, you can bring your whole family and we'll be sit on the front row. We'll be proud to have you here as Brady and wives.
Wow. See, that answers a lot of questions that we had, because we saw in the Brown family, the sister wives,
they were being denied.
Some of their kids tried and they were denied. But then we saw in My Five Wives, your show, that some of your kids did join. And we were wondering, wait a minute, how did they allow one family and not the other? But that explains it.
They were probably given the carbon copy denial like we were. And I just didn't take no for an answer.
Wow.
Well, good for you.
And because I wanted to advocate for my son. Now there were pitfalls of him joining the church that were pretty rough, but now he's married and that's one of my expecting children, and it's wonderful. So
is he and his wife still members of the mainstream LDS church?
Yes, they still are members. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have a daughter who lives up in Boise, and she's a member of the mainstream LDS church. Beautiful family. They go to the temple every so often.
Wow.
Really, really good.
How interesting.
That's awesome. That's so cool that the church invited you, because, I mean, at least from growing up mainstream, my assumption as to why all of these rules were in place, or like when Sam went to get baptized, he wasn't living in the home, so that wasn't the issue, but he did have to meet with a member of the Quorum of the 12. Yep. He had to meet with an apostle, right, to be able to be baptized. And I always just assumed it was like, we would spend so much time as like a kid growing up in the church telling people constantly that we weren't polygamous. I'm like, I think they're just trying to make sure people don't get confused. Right. Like, was that your understanding? Is that they
got a lot of PR?
Yeah, it seemed like a PR move. Like, we just don't want to even have to deal with like, no, we don't practice polygamy. Yes, you might see polygamous families in church, but we don't practice polygamy, So
it's a black eye for the church. Polygamy is a black eye for the church, And point in fact, we were filming the show at the time when my son went on his mission, and I had the head of church PR call and talk to me for about an hour and a half. And as part of the negotiation to let him go on a mission is that we and his transition in the church is that we wouldn't cover it on the show. And if you notice, there's nothing about his struggles or any of that because we agreed not to. And he didn't want to. And I wouldn't. It didn't take the church PR department. My son didn't want to cover it on the show. And I said, fair, we won't.
I did notice that he was gone on his mission, and then all of a sudden, in a later clip, he was back, and we were like, "Whoa, okay." So we had some questions. We had some questions whether or not he served a full 2 years or what happened. So
that makes sense if you just weren't covering.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and his whole transition into the church, we never covered him joining the church because he didn't want it covered. And he wanted his name. And I said, "Fair enough, son." Yeah, he served a full mission in Ecuador. He went down to Ecuador and loved his time there, and so it was. Yeah, he loves
down to your mission.
It's interesting because so when I left the FLDS church, I was introduced to the mainstream LDS church by an amazing family that I consider, and they are my family today still. But it was such. I will still say to this day, even though I am no longer active in the mainstream LDS church, I will still say to this day that it was so good for me in that moment. It is what I needed. I needed something to focus on. I needed a direction to take my life. And I also served a mission, 2 years in Chile.
Oh, yeah. That's where his wife served her mission.
Oh, really?
Really? The same age as you. How old are you?
I'm 33 now.
Oh, okay. So he's younger than you by 3 years. But his wife is from Ecuador, and she served a mission in Chile.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I loved it. And I will tell, it was hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it was a party, but it was a really good thing for me in my life at that time. And so anyway, some people will tell me, how dare you? Why would you leave a cult and join another? And they say things like that. And I'm like, you know what? It's hard to fully understand unless you're in it and on why someone makes the decisions they make. And for me, I still feel the right decisions for me at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I feel going from the church, mainstream church, because I converted to the fundamentalism at 16 and then out of fundamentalism at 35. And every single time it's exactly what I needed to grow into the person I am today. Right. And, which everybody can say that. But it was great for me. I loved my time. I loved growing up in the mainstream church. I had a wonderful childhood, right? I loved my time in the AUB and because of the things I learned, and it made the person. Now, did all of them have their struggles? Yeah, it was pretty rough being a young man in Mormonism and all of the guilt that's just built into being a young man. But was it all good? I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't go back and change it.
Well, you are who you are today because of it. You have the wives that you have today because of it. You have all the children you have. And that's something, too, that people have to realize is it's not just as simple as leaving a religion and wishing that you had never done that. Because, like, I look at my parents, for example, if they were to leave the FLDS, they are still very active in the FLDS. But if they were to leave, people have asked me, would they regret being a part of it? And my answer is I highly doubt it because, now that you have wives and now that you have children, you can't go back and say, I wish I had never been a part of that because you wouldn't have what you have today. So it's a little bit more complex than just, I wish I had never been a part of that cult,
Yeah. And I look back, I talked to some of my friends about this and I just go, man, some of my viewpoints, I'm actually embarrassed by. And I go, my God, how did I not see that? How was I so blind? Because it's almost like religion makes you stupid because it just puts this veil over and you'll excuse things, cognitive dissonance. You'll just, I believe it. So I'll twist reality. I'll do these mental gymnastics to explain away glaring problems. People talk about putting that problem on the shelf, right? Until your shelf breaks.
Yep.
And that's a classic way to describe it. But it's true. Eventually you just can't do that back-ended flip in your head to make it all fit. And for me, it just collapsed, and I just had to go, okay, what do I really believe?
Right. Good for you.
Now, I don't know if I apologize if you had done this in the Jimmy Rex interview.
It's okay.
But if you don't mind reminding me, when you converted to the AUB at 16, did you have other family members that were converting at the same time, or was that something you did on your own?
Yeah. So my dad found the AUB.
Okay.
And he quickly left. Within 4 or 5 years, he was back out of it. But I stuck, But yeah, okay. I converted right around the same time. I was a little bit slower than the rest of my brothers and sisters, because my dad says, listen, if you want to stay in the church, go ahead, stay in the church. I'll support you. Because I really wanted to go on a mission. But then, in fact, things would be way different if it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
My dad moved to Utah, joined the group. I was still going to stay in the church. I was going to finish high school and go on an LDS mission. But the bishop of the Riverton ward where we moved decided he was going to bring me in and give me an interview, because he had heard my dad. My dad had been excommunicated for his beliefs, and he gave an ultimatum that I had to completely deny my father and the family. I had to move out of the home. I had to say everything my dad believes is not true. Well, I've always been a good reader. Even at 16, I was reading all the journal discourses. I was like, well, what about this? What about that? No, Joseph never had more than one wife. And I go, wait, what? And the bishop was a really good apologist. And I was just like, well, that doesn't. And he says, well, if you don't right here, right now say it, then I'm not going to let you go to priesthood meeting anymore. I'm not going to let, you're not going to go to mission. You can go to sacrament meeting, but that's it. And I go, well, I'm not going to just bend over and deny all of this. If you can answer my questions, many of the same questions as on the CES letter, right? Mm-hmm. And all these other questions that are out there. And of course, he couldn't answer them. There's no good answers for a lot of that. And so I ended up fully investigating fundamentalism and then converting really young, 16, into the AUB.
Wow.
Did you feel like the AUB, did you get to ask those same questions to the AUB? Did you feel like they had more answers, or were they just more honest about the history?
Well, I wasn't questioning Mormonism at the time. I was questioning whether or not the whole fundamentalist, whether or not all those original things, right? And they had all the answers. Yes, Brigham Young did this. And I was like, oh, Brigham's cool. Joseph really did have more than one wife. And so all of these claims to original doctrine, the fundamentalists are really good at showing you that. Like they can prove original doctrine all day long. And the church can't. Now they just have modern revelation that's a more full understanding of the 132nd section of the Doctrine and Covenants, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's a tough one.
That one makes
that's a
gives
tough
me
one.
the ick. DNC 132.
Yeah.
Speaking of your dad and your parents, the show did show them in Washington. You went to visit them with your family, and you went out looking for Bigfoot and all that fun stuff.
Yes, so fun.
Those are the best episodes, by the way.
Yes.
Oh, hands down.
We love those. How is he doing, and how's your mom doing? How are they?
So my mom has passed. She died of breast cancer.
Sorry to hear that.
She not long after that show, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and died 5 years later. So it was a pretty rough battle with cancer, and she finally succumbed. But my dad is still just as fiery, and he's 83 years old and just still out looking for Bigfoot in his kilt, and he's a funny duck. And I love him. I go see him. I fly up about every 3 months and see him.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he was so fun, and so I'm glad you asked that, because I'm sure everyone else
is very flavorful, and he's great. So.
It seemed like he had such a special connection with his grandkids, your kids, as well, and that was really fun to see on the show.
Yeah, he's a great grandfather for sure. He's so good, and so he's been a wonderful father-in-law to my wives. I mean, he's awesome. And like my mom, my wives still just say how much they miss her, because she was like another mother to them for sure. like the best mother-in-law that you could have, and would sit. And you even saw that on the show, and I thought that was represented very well on the show. Very authentic what her relationship was to my wives, and they were captured on film. But that happened all the time off film. My mom would sit with them and talk to them, and they could pour their heart out to them, and she would not, because they were all doing it. And my mom would just listen and give advice and never judge, never talk ill of another. You know, she was one of these special souls that truly, I challenge the person that can find my mom went to them and talked bad about someone.
She seemed so sweet. And I love that it's so rare to see relationships where a daughter-in-law can feel open enough so that, like, the fact that your mom knew what they were struggling with or what was going on in their life so personally, I think spoke volumes, because I think most people don't have that kind of relationship with their mother-in-law, where the mother-in-law is asking about, like, how are things like with this, how are things with that, meaning that she already knows that that's a struggle or that they're having that hard time, and is able to ask those deep, meaningful questions. I just thought was so sweet.
The fact that she knew about it. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she knew what it was like to be a plural wife, and she also knew what it was like to deal with me. You know, because I'm her son. And so she gave him really sage advice. So, yeah, mom was amazing.
I'm glad to hear that your dad is still around. I'm sorry to hear about your mom passing on. But the show did, in my opinion, portray your parents as really wonderful people. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah.
Did you have any other questions before?
Oh, I have so many questions.
Okay.
No,
We're still here for many more.
No, I'm just kidding. I was going to say, before we keep you all day, because I know we need to be kind of winding down here a little bit, I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance to ask you about, you were telling us a little bit about your advocacy work and your passion projects now. And I just want to make sure we have a chance to let you tell us what's going on in your life as far as those things go, and give us some links and ways we can support you in that.
Well, I do still speak to different organizations about the dangers of fundamentalism on one side, but I also speak about personal development. I'm really big into that outside of religion, and my talks on fundamentalism and you know, how to free yourself from those pitfalls. But then also we have a foundation that we work, and I don't have any links up yet, but we donate 10% of all the profits from my company, and which is it's a new company, and it's really, really thriving. That started right around the time the shows stopped filming. I started a new company called Ox Glass, and but 10% of all the profits from that company go to Western Africa, where Ascend Together is an organization over there that tries to relieve poverty through education, particularly teaching English and business, small business, to the people in Gambia, and Guinea-Bissau, and which is just destitute. You know, it's horrific, and they get kids to come play basketball, and in exchange for letting them be in a basketball tournament, they have to attend 2 hours of, or let's see, it's an hour a day, so 5 hours a week of tutoring in English and business, which will help raise them up out of poverty. So it's a cause I'm really strongly involved with and want to see through.
That's amazing. And you say the company that you started is able to support that and help in that, at least in some way. What is
the Brady Williams Family Foundation is what it's called, and but it's just a charity that we get money and then help other causes.
Wow. So,
that's awesome.
Boots on the ground ourselves, but
that's amazing. So in the show, you had a construction business, and that was, well, obviously 2008 was difficult for everyone, but it seemed like you were doing well. So what transitioned from construction to what you're doing now? Was that partly because of the show, or was it just something you were passionate about?
Well, I was sick of framing. I was a framer with my brother, and we were just done. We were burnt out from doing rough carpentry. I had horrible health problems with my lower back. I had massive surgery 4 years ago on my lower back, and I had diabetes. I was fat. I was, all types of problems, and I just changed my life radically 4 years ago to where now I'm in the best health of my life. and doing really well. But at all of that around, we transitioned out of rough carpentry. I went back to school. I was doing school during the show. I was trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? I had enough money saved to where we could be okay. But I started this new window company, window, shower door, mirror company, to where it's still in construction industry, but we supply and install windows for large multifamily and high-end residential and all types of stuff. And remodel, we do remodel windows now too. So we tear out and reinstall windows for people's homes. And it's really, I'm so glad it happened, because we're so much more successful now than we were before, to where we're doing really well. The wives, none of them work now.
Wow.
Oh, wonderful.
They work because they've decided they want to be stay-at-home grandmas.
There you go.
Daycare. And
Love it.
didn't have to, but I just said, hey, why don't we? Like Rosemary, she's a very accomplished professional person. Like, she was making a lot of money, and it was difficult for her, but the thought of our daughter Taylor, who's now an engineer, and she's amazing, but she has a baby, and the thought of our grandson Heath going to daycare, Rosemary just like, I don't need to be there. I'm only doing it because personal fulfillment. I don't need the money because Brady takes so good care of us. She offered to just stay home and watch Heath.
Wow. That's the dream.
Yeah. So that's Robin. They're all doing it. They're all staying home, watching grandkids, and doing what they do. So it's
living that best grandma life.
Love it.
I think that would be my mom's dream job for sure. Would have been if she had been able to do that.
Our home's so big. It's just like, bring all the grandkids. They'll all fit.
Man, I love to hear it. I love to hear that you're all still together, because honestly, going into this interview, we didn't know for sure. I mean, the show ended 5 years ago?
Longer than that, right?
Longer than that. It's been 10 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's been a long time.
Double that. Go back. Reverse that. 10 years ago, I mean, a lot can happen in 10 years. So we weren't sure. So it's really good to hear that it seems like your family's thriving. You're doing better than ever. And that's just really cool.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we're doing good.
I have one last question for you. We have people emailing us, and I don't practice or live polygamy, but because of where I came from, people ask us, or I guess share with us, that they want to get into polygamy. What would you tell someone that is not for religious reasons necessarily, but people that are just saying things like, I think that's the right way to live. I want to live polygamy too. What would you say to someone like that that's asking those questions?
Yeah, I've actually spoken to a group of people who, what's that community called, where you're not in a closed relationship, but you have multiple partners. So it's essentially polygamy. And I was just like, listen, if that's what you want to do, knock yourself out, as long as nobody's being manipulated or controlled or coerced into it. But it has pitfalls, and it is hard. Like, why would you want to go through that? Now, I can give you the reasons why I want to continue to do it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just know what you're getting into. And it is not as easy as, I just have so many people to love me. Yeah, you do, but it comes at a cost. Yeah. And I have so many people I get to love, but it comes at a cost. And go speak to someone like me, someone who's lived it, and really ask them, okay, what are you giving up to live polygamy? Because you are giving up a lot, and to live it well in a way that's not coercive or manipulative, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, you give up a lot to live monogamy.
Yep.
Like Sam gives up freedom, Melissa gives up freedom. Like, you have to go home and you're hopefully answering to each other about your time and sharing, where a single guy doesn't have to. I can go to bed whenever I want. I can eat whatever I want. I can leave my dirty socks on the floor all I want. So you're sacrificing to be in a monogamous relationship, and you're sacrificing even more to be in a polygamous relationship. So know what you're getting into before.
I feel like that's a great answer, and I don't feel that I can answer very well to people that are saying those things, because I haven't experienced it. I've lived in a home with it, but I haven't experienced it myself. So thank you for answering that. I think that was very well said.
Well, we always end with, and I know we kind of spoke to this earlier about dangers of fundamentalism, but we always like to end asking if there is someone out there that is watching, that is willing to listen right now, what is one thing you would want to say to somebody who is still in fundamentalism?
Well, I really think they need to get their own relationship with the divine and not let another person deny you the ability to get your own inspiration and to find the courage, and also that it's not beyond hope. Like, it may feel like a death to you, this idea that you might be leaving, and it is a death in sorts, but there's so much more light and lightness when you become a fully authentic individual, and authenticity comes through your own relationship with the divine.
I love that. And we just appreciate you so much for being willing to be on here with us, for coming and speaking with us, letting our viewers know how everything's looking 10 years later, and giving insight into so many things. Many things. It's been a blast.
This was amazing. You're a wealth of information. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to hear more of what it was like for Sam to grow up in polygamy, or hear us interview awesome people that are actually living it themselves like Brady, then please like and subscribe.
Yes. Thank you all so much for being here with us. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to y'all soon.